Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Graphic Thoughts Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Panel, with my co-host today, Thor and Mickey, my sister's dogs. I almost said Thor and Loki. That would have been a better naming for both of them. But they're my co-hosts today. They're going to be pretty quiet, but they'll be here for moral support. I've been saying this every video for the beginning of it, so I'm going to continue on with it. We're up on YouTube. All the episodes up to the current one. All the episodes are up 2 days after the Spotify episode goes up. So check it out there. Anyone who prefers to listen on YouTube or doesn't use Spotify, you can check it out on YouTube. We are working on getting the YouTube videos a little bit better than they are now. I'm not entirely happy with them, so we're going to be working on improving them throughout the time we upload them. But I am very happy with the Spotify podcast and how that is going. So we are continuing on with how that's going. Today's episode is obviously a manga episode. Oh, wait a minute. Before I get to that, I did want to thank everybody and all the people that have been showing support and love on the recent episodes. It means more than you know. But like I was saying, this episode is a manga episode, and this one is probably, other than Heavy Metal, the one I'm the most excited about. It is the first 3 books of Bleach. For this one, we're going to do the same thing as we did for Dragon Ball Z, so it is a bit of a spoiler here. We're going to do the first 3 books this week, and then next week we'll do 4, 5, and 6, and next Friday. So look forward to that. But yeah, I'm so fucking excited for this. This is probably either my 3rd or 4th favorite, or 2nd or 3rd favorite rather, manga behind Heavy Metal and maybe behind Dragon Ball Z, but absolutely behind Heavy Metal. But this is one of the greatest stories I've ever read in my entire life, and some of the greatest characters I've ever read, so I can absolutely not wait to get into this story. It is going to be such a hoot. I hope you guys enjoy it, and I hope you guys enjoy the breakdown. And I hope you guys have all read Bleach, and if you haven't, I hope you guys go read Bleach, because it is so good. And it's pretty, I don't remember the name of the app, but I have an app that I get basically all the anime for only $3 a month, or manga for only $3 a month. And you can read basically all of them. I think the only one that's not on there that I read is Heavy Metal and Attack on Titan. The rest of them are on there, so by the end, this is the intro, and I'll be honest with you, I'm recording the intro at a different time than I'm recording the rest of the episode. So by the time I am recording the rest of the episode, I will have the name of that app and it recommended maybe in the comments or something. But none of that matters. Only thing that matters is the breakdown. So let's get right into this. The first 3 books of Bleach. Alrighty, getting right into the first book of Bleach. Like I was saying earlier, Bleach is one of my favorite mangas, if not, it's definitely in my top 3, if it's not top 2, but I fucking love this one. Cannot wait to get right into it. Volume 1 is the beginning of the manga series. The series is created by, I'm gonna fuck this up, TT Kubo. It introduces the main characters and the core concept of the Soul Reapers and the Hollows. And it establishes our main character, Shigo Karasaki, as a Soul Reaper and as mainly as the main character of our book. But let's get right into it. I am this is probably the anime episode or manga episode that I'm the most excited for that I've done so far. Well, one I'm most excited for that I haven't done is definitely Heavy Metal, but that I'm doing and am about to do is definitely this one. So the story begins in the city of Karakura Town. Probably fucked that up too. Ashigo Karasaki, our main character and the protagonist of this book, is a 15-year-old high school student with several unusual traits. Orange hair. I don't think that's very unusual. I did find it really funny how they considered that in the book though as an unusual trait. I guess where he lives, it's probably not the most common thing, but I did find that really, really fucking funny reading that. He constantly gets in fights, and he can see ghosts. Unlike most people, Ashigo has been able to see spirits since childhood. It's not like, and they actually show later on too that his sister, or at least one of his sisters, is developing it too. It's not as strong as Ashigo's is yet, but. And then you even find out later in the first couple books that he's had this since he was legitimately a boy, like a baby, which is cool. And it just kind of grew since he's gotten older. This isn't very much a typical thing in this town either, by the way. Most people can't see spirits. Ashigo is not a typical delinquent. He fights mainly to protect others and has a strong sense of justice. He doesn't just fight to fight. He normally is fighting to protect the little guy or to do what is right. Which, obviously, if you're the main character in a hero story, that's kind of what you should be doing, so it's not a bad thing. He lives with his father. I'm going to fuck all these names up, by the way. I'm not good with the pronunciation of Japanese names. Ishid Karasaki, Yuzu Karasaki, and Karan Karasaki. One night, Shigo encounters Rukia Kuchiki. Definitely fucked the last name up at least. A mysterious girl dressed in a black kimono, like uniform. A kimono is basically, at least from what I know, kind of like a traditional Japanese outfit. It looks like a robe, but they don't really use it for like getting out of the shower or anything like that. It's like fancy wear. Could be completely wrong. I'm a fucking white guy in the United States. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. But that's from my understanding. That's what I believe it to be. She is shocked to see that, or to hear that Ashigo can see her. Rukia explains that she is a soul reaper, and this is obviously when we find out what a soul reaper is. Soul reapers have two main duties: to guide dead souls to the afterlife or the soul society, and then destroy hollows, evil spirits that attack humans. During their conversation, something dangerous appears. A monster called a hollow attacks Ashigo's house. This is the first introduction of hollows in this book, and I think they did such a fucking good job at making it so impactful. Like, your first visual of the hollow, like, it's so fucking grotesque and scary and fucking, like, it's so intriguing looking, and if you weren't already intrigued with the story, that's just going to intrigue you so much to hook you to kind of keep reading and try to figure out what the fuck's up with these creatures. Rukia starts battling the hollow, but is seriously injured during the fight. She realizes that Ashigo has massive spiritual power, so she offers him a solution. This all happens really fast in the book, too. I'm explaining it relatively fast, but it also relatively happens pretty fast. It's not very spread out from him meeting her to him giving him her abilities. She transfers her soul reaper powers to him, which Ashigo absorbs Rukia's powers. Something unexpected happens. Instead of receiving a small portion, he absorbs almost all of her power. Obviously, this isn't what she planned on doing. She was just trying to give him some abilities to be able to help her fight this thing off. In doing so, she literally gave him everything. Again, not something she planned on doing, obviously, or wanted to do. She basically took herself out of the fight. Shigo transforms into a Soul Reaper with a black robe and a massive sword called Zanpakuto. I'm fucking this shit up. He defeats the Hollow with one powerful strike. However, this creates a problem. Rukia loses her powers. This was such a fucking cool scene too, when he fucking slices I believe he cut the head off of the thing. Oh, it was so fucking sick. The art in this book, I do want to mention it, and I will probably have a bit of it. I've been trying to make these slideshows for the videos on YouTube, but it's a lot more challenging than I once would have thought. If you have any suggestions, I'd love to hear it. But until I can do those, I've just been trying to put some artwork into the thumbnails rather than just the titles. So I'll probably try to put some artwork of the book throughout the thumbnail. But it is so fucking cool, and they have the coolest visuals of the way things look and the way people look, and then the way contrasting to the way these these hollows and these spirits and ghosts look. Since Rukia cannot return to the Soul Society without her powers, she must remain in the human world. She moves into Ashigo's closet and pretends to be a transfer student at his school. Ashigo is forced to help her perform Soul Reaper duties to begin their partnership. At first, Ashigo wasn't too on board with taking over these Soul Reaper duties, just mainly he didn't want the responsibility of it. He's always felt like he has more responsibility than he needs. But she reminds him that if he doesn't fight hollows, innocent people will die. So Ashigo reluctantly accepts. Ashigo tries to continue normal life while secretly acting as a Soul Reaper. However, the double life becomes difficult. Obviously, with Rukia moving into his closet, she also enrolls at Ashigo's school to keep an eye on him. I mentioned that earlier. She just says she's in it for an exchange student. Her attempts to act like a normal student lead to many comedic moments. This chapter shows the beginning of Ashigo and Rukia's partnership dynamic, and then their friendship entirely. You don't really see it quite too early, but as the books go on, you can definitely see them getting closer as reluctantly as they are to be getting closer. Next, we're introduced to Yatsuro Sada, or Chad. This is one of Ashigo's closest friends. Chad protects a parakeet being bullied by local thugs. What Chad does not realize is that the bird contains the spirit of a dead boy named Yuchi. Ashigo can see the spirit inside of the parakeet, obviously because of his abilities. A hollow appears and tries to devour the spirit. Ashigo fights the creature but also learns something new. Hollows are often former human souls that lost their hearts. After the battle, Ashigo performs a ritual called Kanzo, Soul Burial, to ascend the boy's spirit to the Soul Society. This part is super important for many different reasons. For one, it's the first time we see him sent it, or someone being sent to the Soul Society rather than them just taking out a hollow. That's going to be super important and going to happen a lot more later on and more throughout the book. So it's a very important thing to see right here. And then that the hollows are often, or that the hollows are former people, that they were people that they're human souls that lost their hearts, that there's still something like basically holding them there, basically. That's why they also go after their loved ones, like we'll see later in this book. That blew my fucking mind at the time. They kind of, especially with calling them hollows, it's kind of hinted that there is something more to what they are, and you'll probably figure out where more is hinted to it as you read it. But when I read that they were fucking people before that, it was so fucking crazy to think about. That was such a fucking cool thing. And then obviously that's big on, kind of impactful to the story, because then now going forward, the hollows that we come across or the hollows that we see, we know that there are former people, that these were once people that were alive. So very important chapter. That would be chapter 4. There's 7 chapters in each manga. I don't remember if that's like that for every manga. I've never actually paid too much attention for that, but I'm pretty sure for at least Bleach it's 7 chapters in each book. I could be wrong though. That leads us to chapter 5 though, and Rukia continuing to train Ashigo. She teaches him how to detect hollows, how spiritual pressure works, and how to track lost souls. However, Ashigo struggles with the responsibility. He begins realizing that protecting people as a Soul Reaper means constant danger and constant battles. He's never just going to be able to live a normal life or just be able to be away from it for a little bit. He's constantly going to be in a position where he has to be saving somebody. Or it could always be constantly called to be saving somebody no matter what's going on. So it is obviously a big responsibility that is going to take over a good portion of not only his life, but just people's lives in general that are doing it. So shortly after all of this, we're introduced more directly to Orihime. She's many people's favorite character, and if you see pictures of her, you'll understand why. I think it's kind of silly how she was drawn. But Orihime is kind, quirky, and slightly absent-minded. Although she cannot fully see spirits yet, she occasionally senses supernatural activity. This hints that some of Ashigo's friends have latent spiritual abilities. You kind of see that more later on in, I don't know if it's this book, but in one of these books, so we'll get back to that. The idea of her, not only just her, but people in general around her being able to see these things. The final chapter of the book introduces us to Yoru Ashida. He reveals that he belongs to a secret group called the Quincy. What are Quincies? Quincies are human spiritual warriors who destroy hollows completely using spiritual bows and arrows. This puts them in a conflict with Soul Reapers. Soul Reapers purify hollows while Quincies erase them from existence. Obviously, there's a bit of a contrast between that. This is where a bit of a rivalry begins. Yuri hates Soul Reapers and blames them for near extinction of the Quincy. He challenges Ashigo to a competition. Who can defeat more hollows in one night? The challenge sets up the events of Volume 2. Some important things just to remember coming out of that. Obviously, hollows, they are corrupted souls that devour the spirits of humans. We learned in that book that they were once humans. We learned about Soul Reapers. They are spiritual guardians who purify hollows and guide souls. We learned about Ryutsu, spiritual pressure, the energy that determines how powerful a spiritual being is. Ashigo's Ryutsu is unusually high for even before becoming a Soul Reaper. Before he gets any of the powers, his is already unbelievably high. I think the first volume, at least out of the 3, works the best and it balances so well just because it does such a good job balancing three core aspects, which is the supernatural battles, comedy, and the school life, and just the intermingling between the characters of the book. That I didn't get too much into that just because that's not as important to the actual breakdown of the book, and obviously if you're reading that, you're going to be able to read and get more of that yourself. And I don't necessarily think that's as important for me to kind of get deep into the social parts of that like that. But and then the emotional ghost stories. The mix is why Bleach quickly became one of the biggest manga series in the world. I think that this is one of the best written and then best developed stories that I've ever read throughout basically any series. Marvel, DC, Image Comics, actual books, movies, TV shows. This is one of the most ground or structurally perfect stories that I've ever read. And it's one of the most enjoyable stories that I've ever read. That'll get us right into the volume 2, though. Obviously, at the end of the last book, we left off with Yuri Ishida challenging Ishigo. Yuri Ishida confronts Ishigo at school and reveals he belongs to a secret warrior group called the Quincy's. The Quincy's are humans who fight hollows using spiritual weapons, mainly energy bows. Unlike Soul Reapers purify hollows. Quincy's destroy them completely. This difference once caused a huge conflict between the two groups. Yuri challenges Ishigo to a competition, like I just said, who can kill the most hollows in one night. The winner proves their method is superior. Ishigo initially refuses, but eventually accepts. Yuri uses a dangerous tool called hollow bait. This device releases a spiritual signal that attracts hollows. However, he activates a massive amount of bait, which summons dozens of hollows at once. This creates chaos in Kuroko Town. Rukia becomes furious because the plan puts countless civilians at risk. Ishigo must now fight multiple hollows simultaneously. Obviously, with someone who's just learning and just getting started, this is not ideal. This is not a situation that he would want to have been a part of or should have been a part of. He should never have put himself in this scenario. So, obviously, she's not happy, and it's just a very, very shitty fucking place to be in. Like I said, the hollow bait worked a little too well. A large number of hollows flood into the town. Ishigo quickly realizes Yuri underestimated the danger. Instead of competing, Ishigo starts protecting civilians first. This moment very much highlights the key difference between them, that Yuri wants to prove Quincy's superiority. Ishigo prioritizes life-saving. He is a true hero. He doesn't necessarily care as much about the glory as he does about being able to do what he's supposed to be doing. So that is a very, very big thing for them to show, especially this early in the book, with this early of, or developing the character this early to show that is a very big thing. To later on show that character, so. While battling the Hollows, Ishigo and Yuri argue about their philosophies. Yuri explains the history of Quincy. Hundreds of years ago, Soul Reapers wiped out the Quincy because destroying Hollows disrupted the balance of souls. Yuri's grandfather was one of the last Quincy's survives. This is why Yuri hates the Soul Reapers. However, their argument is interrupted by something even worse. A massive creature suddenly emerges in the sky. This monster is called the... This giant class of Hollow created when hundreds of Hollows merged together. Even Rukia Kashigo says this type of monster is far beyond Ishigo's level. This Minos appears like a towering black giant wearing a white mask. Despite the danger, Ishigo refuses to retreat. He attacks the Minos. The monster fires a devastating energy blast called a Zero. Ishigo barely survives the attack, but then his spiritual pressure explodes. His power suddenly rises dramatically. He slashes the Minos with enormous attack. The monster retreats back into the sky. This moment hits that Ishigo's power is abnormal even amongst Soul Reapers. After the battle, Yuri reflects on what he saw. He realizes Ishigo never tried to win the contest. Instead, Ishigo focused on protecting others. This earns Yuri's respect. This rivalry softens and they begin to see each other as allies rather than enemies. I think this is probably, at least so far, but definitely in the first 3 books, I think this is, if not the most important, one of the most important fight scenes and battles of all of them, just because it truly shows Ishigo as a hero like it should. And obviously with all the shit going on, there is plenty of people that would have ran, but him still fighting, even though how strong this thing is and even though he's so outnumbered and outpowered, truly shows how heroic and how fucking brave he is. So they did a really, really good job with that, I think. That's why I do truly think it is one of the most important in the story. The final part of the volume begins the story of Orihime. We learn about her childhood, had abusive parents, and ran away with her older brother, Sora. Her brother raised her and protected her, but he died years earlier. Now his spirit has returned. However, something terrible has happened. His soul has transformed into a hollow. The volume ends just as a tragic confrontation begins between Orihime and the hollow. Obviously, there was a lot of developments and big things coming out of book 2, so let's get right into those. The Quincy race, for one, gets introduced. A completely different group of spiritual warriors. The Minos Grande, the first major high-level hollow threat in the series. Ashigo's hidden power. The fight with the Minos hints that Ashigo's spiritual energy is unusually massive. Even before getting the powers of the Soul Reaper, his powers were fucking insane. So it's insane the abilities that he could someday have. And they very much hint to it. And then Orihime's story begins one of the first truly tragic arcs in Bleach. Once we get into that story, and which will be in book 3, it's so fucking dark, man. It is so fucking dark. But I cannot wait to get right into that. So let's do that. Let's jump right into book 3. Actually, before I do that, I did want to say that I do struggle with these names, and I've apologized and stuff like that before. But I do want to apologize specifically if it does take anybody out of these breakdowns or out of these stories. I guess I could not be lazy and do like a Google pronunciation app or something to kind of learn before I start these videos, but it just seems like a very unnecessary extra step. Mainly because when I'm reading it in my head is like the way I'm pronouncing it on these videos is the way I'm reading it in my head, and that's how I read it through the story, and it doesn't affect my reading of the story. But then again, I could understand the people who have watched the show or do speak the language and know how to pronounce these names properly, and it taking them out of the story. So if you want to give feedback on that, whether or not that does or whether or not you don't even give a fuck, I would appreciate that. Obviously, my goal, it wouldn't be to take anyone out of the breakdown just from mispronouncing names or anything of that nature. I try not to, and for the ones I know, like Ashigo, it's a lot easier, but some of these are really freaking difficult, and I've never been good with weird words that have, like, just different languages, I guess. So I did just want to apologize for anybody who is affected or bothered by that. But off of that for a minute, let's go to book 3. So volume 3 obviously continues directly after volume 2. Orihime begins sensing her dead brother's spirit nearby. Her brother Sora died years earlier, but his soul has not moved on. Instead, something terrible has happened. He has become a hollow. Why he became a hollow? When a soul remains attached to the human world too long, the chain connecting it to the body slowly erodes. Once the chain breaks, the soul becomes corrupted and transforms into a hollow. Sora's loneliness and jealousy caused this transformation. Sora appears at Orihime wearing a hollow mask. He attacks Orihime violently, but emotionally he is conflicted. The tragedy is that a hollow instinct forces him to devour souls, even the sister he loves, specifically the people that they love, they go after first. This shows an important concept. Hollows often retain fragments of their human emotions, which makes them tragic monsters, almost. Obviously, we very much see here that he knows exactly what he's doing and he knows who Orihime is, yet he still can't stop himself or keep himself from attacking him, even though he's not really wanting to. So, it's very much, once you get to this point that you're a hollow, you lose all control of yourself. This is now who you are, and what you do is go after souls. So, I think they did a really, really cool job with that, and it's a really, really fucking sad read. It does a really good job getting you emotionally invested, not only in Orihime, but even more in Ashigo, to try to get behind him to stop this guy before he hurts Orihime. Ashigo, like I just said, Ashigo arrives to protect Orihime. A brutal fight begins between Ashigo and the Hollow. During the battle, Sora reveals something heartbreaking. He watched Orihime for years after his death, but when he saw her smiling and living normally, he felt abandoned and forgotten. I think this specifically touches on a lot of things because obviously everyone has had people in their life die, and you always get that thought whether or not they'd want you to kind of continue your life and live it how you'd want to live it, or whether or not they'd want you to sit there and be upset about their death. Obviously, you're going to be upset for a little bit of time, but logically, you would think they would hope that you'd be happy eventually. But this shows that it truly can affect them too, that you being happy can make them think that maybe it didn't mean as much to you that you lost them. So I do think it's a really interesting concept, and it's an interesting thing for this book to touch upon. And I truly don't think I've ever read a book that touched upon that specific subject matter ever. And I don't think a book could do it as good or at the same level, but I think it's a really interesting subject, and I'm shocked that I've never come across it in another sort of context before rather than just this. So that's pretty fucking cool. But the loneliness from him feeling abandoned by Orhim, slowly corrupted his soul, and this caused him to become a hollow. This emotional conflict weakens the hollow. Instead of running away, Orhim does something unexpected. She forgives her brother. She tells him she never forgot him and she has always loved him. Hearing this allows Sora's human consciousness to break through the hollow's instinct. He regains control of himself for a moment. He begs Ashigo to destroy him so he can be free. Ashigo delivers the final strike. This is also a really powerful scene because it's truly showing that he is not wanting to be the monster. Doesn't want to be hurting people. He does it specifically Orhim. It's just the nature of the beast. He doesn't necessarily have a say in the matter. Until this moment, he didn't get a break from this overriding monster that has overcame him. So after the Hollow is defeated, Sora's soul returns to normal. Ashigo performs a soul burial ritual. This sends Sora's purified soul to the Soul Society, the afterlife. Orhim tearfully says goodbye to her brother. This is one of the earliest emotional stories in the series. I'm only on book 8 or 9, but I truly don't know if there's going to be a story that hits me as deep on an emotional level. It truly got me to be really attached to these characters and truly feel like sorrow for these characters that not as many books has been able to get me to do, just because obviously they're not real characters, so sometimes it's a little harder to get behind it. But man, this is one of the hardest fucking hitting story arcs I've ever read. Just this thing with Orhim and her brother, and then how it also deepens just the emotional thing with taking down these hollows in general, because all of these other hollows are similar things to Orhim's brother. They're not necessarily monsters who want to be monsters. They're people trapped inside these monsters, basically, in a way. So I think it's a really fucking cool. And they touched upon so many things in this book. And I don't know. I don't think there could be much of more of an emotional story after that. Or a more emotional story, rather. A number of hollows appearing around Koroko town begins increasing. This is because of Ashigo's massive spiritual pressure. His Reiatsu, strong spiritual energy, attracts supernatural creatures. This means Ashigo's presence is slowly turning the town into a spiritual hotspot. A mysterious man named Katsuki Hora appears. He runs a small candy shop in town, but he is not normal. Yohora seems to know about Soul Reaper's hollows, Ashigo's powers. He begins subtly guiding Ashigo. However, his true identity remains a mystery. For a while, that is. You see him, he appears a lot more throughout the books, and you'll see and figure out and learn more about his character as you go. Ohora offers to help Ashigo become stronger. He warns that Ashigo's current abilities are unrefined and dangerous. Ashigo accepts the offer to train. This decision will lead directly into the next major storyline. At the same time, Rukia continues living in the human world, but there is a looming problem. She gave her Soul Reaper powers to a human, which is a serious crime in Soul Society. Eventually, Soul Society will notice she is missing, and this will set up the future Soul Society arc, one of the biggest storylines in Bleach in general. There is a lot of things that came out of this book, a lot of big things that kind of made you think. For one is just the tragedy of Hollows. Hollows are not always just evil monsters. Many of them are lost human souls, basically trapped inside of these fucking hideous monsters. Obviously, we saw Orhim's story and then the forgiveness and love, and then the closure. And we saw that love and forgiveness can free corrupted souls. And then obviously we saw Ashigo's growing power. Ashigo's spiritual pressure continues to grow beyond normal levels. It's so large and strong now that it's attracting other evil spirits and evil entities to the place. So that's pretty fucking crazy. But this volume obviously very much expands the emotional depths of the story and the emotional depths of the characters. I think they done a really good job at introducing all these side characters and the side people to the book. They did a good job at introducing the main characters and making them really interesting and really want you to, or you really want to get behind these characters. Specifically Ashigo, they've done a really good job of making him a hero-like figure that you truly want to be behind. So that's really fucking cool. Like I said earlier in these books, these have always been one of, if not in my top 3 mangas of all time. I think they've just done such a great job with the story in general. It is one of the best told and structurally told stories that I have ever read. It truly keeps you hooked from beginning to end. There's, even with the really good ones, there's parts that you kind of get lost or kind of get out and lose you and you're not as into them, but these books truly have just grasped me, and I have not really been able to put them down since I start reading them. I'll buy one I normally buy them in the 3 in each book, and yeah, I'll finish it in like a week or maybe 2 weeks at most, but it's really, really good. And next Friday we are going to do book 4, 5, and 6. Gonna do exactly what we did with Dragon Ball Z, just the next week continue the thing. And then who knows, we might even do the next 3 after that, because I really, really like this story. It gets even emotionally more deep in the next book, and the next story gets really fucking crazy. You find out so much shit in the next 4 books, or 3 books, I mean. So keep an eye on that. That will be all for this week's episode, or this Friday's episode, rather. I, like always, want to thank everybody who's been listening, following, subscribing, everything on Spotify. It means the absolute world to me, and I could not possibly thank everybody enough. I know I've been saying it a lot, but I also obviously want to mention the YouTube again. Every episode is up on YouTube. For some reason, I noticed that I had episode 10 in the pending to upload, but I just never actually uploaded it, even though I uploaded 11, 12, and I think 13 after that, so that was weird. I don't know why I did that. But I would say keep an eye on the YouTube. Eventually, soon up here, I'm going to update the ones that we already have up there, but after that, also, there's going to be updated video. We're going to have kind of like a slideshow of art and different panels from whatever book or manga or whatever it is that we're going to be talking about, or even for the bonus episode for the Tarzan when that does come out, and I'm going to give you some more news on that here in a minute. But I'm going to try to put all of those in to kind of make the videos a little more interesting if you're going to be watching it or have the ability to watch them on YouTube. Obviously, like always, the YouTube episodes are going to be coming out 2 days after the Spotify episodes. The manga episodes come out every Friday. Comic book episodes come out every Monday. And on the topic of the bonus episode, I'm about halfway through recording it, and I'm realizing that it is going to be ridiculously long. So, kind of a treat for you guys, and also a treat for myself to not have to edit a 2-hour video. We are going to be breaking it up into 2 parts. So, not this week coming up. Let me think. This episode is coming out on March 13th, so let's say not this week coming up, but the following week on Wednesday will be the first part of the bonus episode, and then the week after that will be the second part of the bonus episode, so keep an eye out for that. I also misspoke when I mentioned this in the first place. It's over 100 hours of Tarzan movies. It is not 100 movies. It is 50 movies if you're including the Disney movies and the newer live-action Tarzan movies, which I will end up including and talking about. I really, really, really am enjoying doing that episode. I enjoy all of these episodes and recording all these episodes and making all of this stuff for you guys, but I am especially enjoying the ridiculousness of there being as many Tarzan movies as there are. So going through the history and the filmography of all of that is so fucking fun. So I absolutely cannot wait for you guys to hear that. I'm very, very excited for that. But that will be about all for this week's episode. About all for this week's updates. I do have a pretty big episode coming out on Monday. It'll be our first non-Marvel or DC comic-themed episode. It will be Judge Dredd, Judge Child. One of my favorite Judge Dredd comic arcs, and then one of my favorite comic arcs outside of Marvel and DC in general. So, very excited for that, and it's a pretty big because it's not Marvel or DC. It's the first one comic book of that nature that we've done. There's going to be a whole bunch more. There was supposed to be an Image comic one, so I'll give you... I'm not going to spoil that one, but that I was going to do a couple weeks ago, but I couldn't get all the issues of it, so we will do that a couple weeks from now, too. But, so keep an eye on that. And once again, just going to thank everybody for listening and keeping an eye on everything that I'm doing. And I appreciate it more than you will ever know. But I hope everybody has a good day or good night whenever you guys are listening to this. And Dr. Panel out.